The rising no-code revolution is about to completely upend the world of software development, and it's not clear who will end up as the collateral damage in the process. Now, this probably sounds crazy, but it wouldn't be the first time that major technical disruption has left a trail of dead bodies in its wake. There are three key concepts that will be vital to internalize if we want to stand the test of time in this coming New World Order. We'll also outline how this polarizing and disruptive new trend is set to affect job prospects for the almost 30 million software engineers around the world, or whether programming is soon to go the way of the switchboard operator. In 2013, tech underwent a watershed moment right under everyone's noses. See, for the first time since the inception of the idea of fully visual website builders, the first player in the space made an initial public offering. As a fast follow, several other companies made the same move in rapid succession. This was unprecedented and brought with it major market validation for the low-code, no-code space. See, in tech, success often comes down to execution. Ideas are important, but good ideas require an all-star team in order to bring them to prime time. Case in point, almost a full 20 years earlier, Adobe made a play at the very same concept with a product they dubbed Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver was a complete website builder and designer that allowed users to construct their website using drag and drop components. This style of editing is often referred to as WYSIWYG, which stands for what you see is what you get. And it's not hard to see why bringing this concept to web development was such a compelling idea. Sounds great, right? Well, ultimately it proved to be a false start because despite being 20 years ahead of their time, the idea languished and never realized its ultimate potential. And Adobe isn't the only company that had a go at this concept. In 2016, Google launched a similar tool called App Maker, which I personally loved, but in 2020 they pulled the plug and shot the project in the head. Rest in peace. But that would not be the last word on the matter. See, in 2004, an ambitious student at the University of Maryland named Anthony Castellana began moonlighting on a project to create a visual website builder. His insight was that delivering expensive desktop applications was cumbersome and quickly being replaced by cloud-based SaaS solutions. So he decided to host his application in the cloud and leverage a SaaS business model. The convergence of brick and mortar businesses rapidly coming online and needing self-managed websites, along with the rise of the SaaS model, created the perfect storm to launch SquareSpace into the stratosphere. Consequently, before Anthony had graduated from college, Squarespace was turning 1 million in annual revenues, a major accomplishment. In 2021, Squarespace filed a request for IPO, commanding a total valuation of $10 billion. Fast forward to 2022, and this momentum shows little sign of letting up. Y Combinator, the most prestigious tech incubator, has also thrown its hat into the ring in a big way by investing in a whole cohort of no-code tools, many of which are already realizing material levels of success. WebFlow, for instance, has raised north of 300 million to compete directly with Squarespace, Wix, and WordPress. WordPress being the primary incumbent here. In fact, in 2021, it was estimated that WordPress was powering 37% of all websites on the internet. This is a staggering statistic that speaks volumes about the greenfield opportunity available to these new competing products if they can deliver superior user experiences. But it's a mistake to focus exclusively on the small number of companies targeting general web development, because no-code is now cropping up in a number of adjacent spaces, including internal application development, spreadsheets, automation and workflows, project management, mobile app development, full-fledged product app development, APIs, artificial intelligence, design, and yes, you guessed it, Web3 and crypto. See, the visual website builders successfully paved the way for a whole new cohort of companies looking to be the no-code provider for XYZ. The market has graduated beyond web development and is looking to take on even more sophisticated technical challenges in line with the advances in general tooling. One such use case that has blown my mind is that companies are now tackling full-fledged native app development. This is a harder nut to crack than web development, which must output the language of the web, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, because native apps must compile to two entirely discrete runtimes, Java for Android and Objective-C on iOS. And code written in one language can't easily be ported to another. But they're doing it on the shoulders of technologies like React Native, which was built for this cross-platform adherence. Well-funded startups like Draftbit, Glide, or Adalo are starting to build out sophisticated solutions in the mobile tech space, and I expect these tools to become mainstays before long. But no-code is growing along another dimension that isn't quite garnering the fanfare of some of these high-profile companies. But I can tell you from my experience as a no-code consultant, it will have far-reaching and profound implications on how businesses operate. This emerging innovation is around operational tooling. Let me explain. Software tools are becoming increasingly integrated, since their value is often enhanced greatly when they are leveraged within a broader ecosystem. For instance, if I were to provide micro-consulting sessions as a service to my audience, what this might look like is that I could generate a Calendly meeting scheduling link. This meeting would then integrate with Stripe, which controls the hourly rate and facilitating payments for the transaction. When a new call is booked, Calendly may then integrate with Google Calendar to automatically put the meeting on my calendar and also populate the meeting with a designated Zoom link using my account. Then I might use Zapier to automatically send me a Gmail email and a Slack message notifying me of the new meeting. This is a sophisticated information system and workflow that is entirely codeless and effectively streamlines a business process. Isolated, each of these tools provides limited value, but together they comprise a business operation tailored to my needs. And the ability for tools to connect and integrate seamlessly is becoming even more critical as the technological landscape further matures. This point was perfectly illustrated by a project that I worked on with my partner Ray within our no-code consulting arm called State Change. We were approached by a Series A hardware startup that had raised north of $30 million in funding and was ready to begin taking pre-orders for their product, but needed an e-commerce solution to serve this function. Their team was lean, they had developers, but rightfully they were not interested in owning the e-com portion of their website. So Ray and I did a brief assessment of their tech stack and quickly realized we could effectively extend their existing website through some off-the-shelf no-code solutions, since they were already using WebFlow. So we enabled the e-commerce package for them on WebFlow, and under the hood, this is just a connection between WebFlow and Stripe. We created a couple SKUs, instantiated those in WebFlow, then mocked up the UI in WebFlow, but left the majority of the design work for another team to handle. But in addition to being able to begin processing their orders on their website and facilitate those transactions, they needed some back-end webhooks to fire each time a new order was placed. And this is where something like Zapier really shines. See, Zapier is an event-driven API automation tool that allows you to connect disparate tools for common use cases. For instance, you could use Zapier to listen for new YouTube uploads on a particular channel and then cross-post those to other various social media platforms like Twitter or Instagram. Unfortunately, if you want to comment, like, or subscribe, you'll still need to do that manually, which you can do, by the way. So we set up a Zap, which is a Zapier webhook, to listen for new Stripe orders. And when those were generated, the system would send formatted emails to the proper personnel within our client's organization through the use of the Gmail integration. But we also wanted to create a new account and deal in the client's CRM, in this case, HubSpot. So we added another Zap to integrate with HubSpot and open up a new deal and populate the deal with the requisite information pulled from the order that they had just placed. In my mind, the remarkable thing about this engagement was that despite charging almost $500 an hour for this work, we were able to confine the entire coding component of this project to around 10 lines of JavaScript code, which we used to pre-process some of the data as it was flowing from Stripe into HubSpot. After this experience, I was transformed into a no-code convert, because Ray and I know that if a development agency or freelancer was tasked with delivering this, it could easily have inflated to 5 figures and beyond, not to mention the time it would have taken to deliver this sort of project. But beyond that, we were able to train the client on how to manage this system and own it, so they weren't dependent on us for maintenance going forward. This project wasn't relegated to just building their website. Instead, it was about streamlining development around the heart of their business: acquisition, deal flow, inventory, fulfillment. It was about architecting an information system to meet their business needs. Another stellar example of how I've seen no-code leveraged to great effect was when Ray and I were approached by a fashion startup based out of Boston back in 2019. This founder duo was composed of two sisters looking to build a consumer application that leverages sophisticated artificial intelligence to bring hyper-targeted fashion recommendations to its users. The idea here was that they would recommend products, and as users made purchases, the company would then take a rake on those transactions through the use of established affiliate programs with major retailers. When this company approached my business partner and I, their plan was to bring this idea to fruition by enlisting a development firm to build out an Android, iOS, and a web application. They were looking at spending north of 6 figures on this initiative. And although I'll admit I was seeing dollar signs, my business partner suggested we think more critically about this. Was building out these applications with minimal market data really the best path forward? Wouldn't that incur material risk if we discovered that the idea was not viable? How could we spend less money on an MVP, reduce the technical footprint while still gathering the critical market research that would inform the business thesis and arm potential investors with the requisite data they would need to make a funding decision? So we made the difficult and counterintuitive decision to advise them not to build out their application on the 3 major platforms and advise them to instead lean into the no-code methodology. And in retrospect, this decision has aged very well for everyone involved. We began to brainstorm. How could they leverage off-the-shelf tools to deliver faster, cheaper, and with greater effect? And with that, their MVP began to take shape. The insight was that their users were already using SMS by way of Apple's iMessage or Android's messaging system. So why couldn't they deliver recommendations directly to a user's phone through SMS? Furthermore, product links sent to a user's phone would be pre-rendered by Apple's iMessage engine, which would provide an aesthetically acceptable mode of interaction. Should this work, the next question was, how could the system track click-through rates and attribution for the links that were sent to their users? And they were able to create a first-party domain that would supply query parameters to track users, products, and recommendations, and then proxy it to the end user's retail website. They also discovered that this entire process could be managed and scaled through Twilio, which allows developers to send and respond to SMS messages in an automated way. But how could they solicit feedback to train the AI model and continuously improve their recommendations? They began to look into and better understand iMessage's tapback functionality. This is a feature Apple offers that lets users react to messages, and it's this feature that they leveraged to allow users to like, dislike, or heart product recommendations, which in turn Twilio could log and feed back into the machine learning model, creating an ever-improving virtuous feedback loop tailored to that user's fashion preferences. On the back end, they enlisted the Rakuten Retail API to manage affiliate deals with retailers and gain access to their inventory. And finally, they used BigQuery to store this inventory as well as all the back-end user data. The beauty of this example is that they were able to ultimately get more with less. Had they decided to build out separate mobile applications, then their users would have had to download and install yet another application, and the onboarding process would include that much more friction. They were able to bypass this requirement and reach their users where the users already were and leverage those advantages to great effect. So why can't we ignore this new paradigm shift? For the same reason we can't afford to reinvent the wheel. Let me explain. There's an old business trope that goes, you can easily spot a pioneer because they will be lying face down with arrows in their back. This is an allusion to the fact that most business ideas fail because definitionally, most experiments fail. It's a small number of experiments that are wildly more successful than the rest. And unfortunately, this message still rings true. As business proprietors and creators, we must constantly be asking ourselves if the work we are doing is at the pointy end of the spear. That is the work we're doing relegated to what is unique and valuable about our business. We must then ruthlessly outsource everything else. No-code shines brightest in the early stages of a business because it accelerates our ability to deliver ideas to the market as minimum viable products. It allows us to de-risk the enterprise by quickly delivering an MVP and beginning to gather market data without large outlays of capital. No-code also enables a whole new segment of the market to access tools that can bring their ideas to life. This market segment has historically been comprised of designers, creative thinkers, idea people, and the otherwise non-technical founders who are now able to bring their ideas to life. No-code lowers the barrier to entry, effectively breaking down walls between someone with a good idea and getting something up and running quickly. Those with the determination and grit now have access to tools required to breathe life into their ideas. And this must be a good thing because it effectively brings the power to the people and further democratizes software development. No-code also begs the question around what it means for a company to create novel intellectual property. What is net new about your business that is not being done elsewhere? Or are you building functionality that can be introduced instead with an off-the-shelf solution? Thriving communities have sprung up to support builders looking to get smarter about these platforms. Communities like makerpad.co and nocode.tech offer catalogs of tools, forums, and a number of other features to let people learn and build together with no-code tools. But like any new trend, no-code is not perfect. Even the term no-code is a bit of a false advertisement, as most, if not all, of these systems support custom code. In practice, no-code usually means less code, but that doesn't have quite the same ring to it. The reality is no-code is not turnkey, and you won't have a meaningful shiny new app in 5 minutes despite what the marketing may claim. Additionally, this philosophy introduces new perils for the business owner. The first is around vendor lock-in and overall platform dependency. Imagine you build your application on platform A, and then that platform undergoes major changes either in support, feature sets, or economics and pricing, or maybe they just go away altogether. Obviously, this exposes you to some level of risk within your own organization and begs the question around whether you are building your house on sand. Additionally, an eventuality in this space is that a company will build out a unicorn using no-code systems. The question is, who will own the IP associated with that business should this scenario come to pass? When the stakes are that great and all anyone can see is dollar signs, it's hard to imagine the underlying platform won't at least attempt to lay claim to some of that IP. But is no-code reserved for the early stage startup or SMB use cases? Well, it looks like that may have initially been the case, but even that is rapidly changing. No-code often gets pigeonholed as a prototyping tool or otherwise reserved for nascent businesses still in their infancy. By and large, this has been the case, but I'm now beginning to see it creep its way into the largest of business enterprises. See, earlier this year, one of my clients, which happens to be a top 5 bank in the United States, asked me to explore a no-code tool that had been pitching them. This turned me on to a company called Uncork, which aspires to bring no-code to the financial services and insurance sectors. And this company is not messing around. They've received hundreds of millions in backing from the likes of BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, and one of Google's independent growth funds. See, the FSI vertical has a whole set of unique concerns around HIPAA, PCI, PII, and other bodies of law around data governance that they need to follow, which often preclude them from being able to utilize most new tools and platforms. But all of that is changing with the advent of products like Uncork, which aim to bridge that gap. And this may be a hot take, but honestly, after working in the FinServ fintech space for a number of years, I do think it's a natural fit. I've worked side by side in the trenches with engineers building out these applications, writing React Native code, and it feels to me like they are reinventing the wheel a bit. The salient question is, should a bank be trifling with the most vexing engineering concerns of our day? My answer to that question would be no. They should be focused on providing world-class banking experiences and not getting pulled down into any technical minutia. Furthermore, if we look at some of the companies leveraging visual website builders like WebFlow, we can see that there are notable companies leaning into these tools. Companies like Dell or Zendesk are already using WebFlow. DoorDash is using Retool. Liberty Mutual is using Uncork. Spotify has even partnered with VoiceFlow. The writing is on the wall and the New World Order is set. So what does all this mean for the software engineer? Are computer programmers facing displacement? The answer here is a resounding no. But there is a but. See, this movement will have two lasting implications on software engineers that we must be aware of if we want to thrive in this new landscape. The first is that most companies will be forced to lean into no-code, and here's why. Take two companies vying for the same market. Each has the same amount of initial seed funding. If company A decides it needs to build its application in-house, where company B leverages the no-code philosophy, what we'll find is that company B will be faster to market, save time and money, and very likely end up with a better product. In the same way that companies today don't rebuild database solutions or operating systems from scratch, the next generation of startups will take that abstraction a step further. Anything that is not unique to that business should be outsourced to a no-code tool in order to optimize that company's resources and ultimately accelerate their pace of innovation. But once companies exhaust the non-unique development efforts of their businesses, they will need to pivot to ProCode solutions to build out what is unique and novel to their business concept, and that's okay. On the micro scale, it's just like leveraging Google Sheets for 95% of your project, but then extending the functionality using app scripts for just that final mile of work that Sheets can't do out of the box. So this idea doesn't eliminate development work, it just shifts the nature of the work away from reinventing the wheel and places the focal point directly on what is unique and original to your company's core value proposition. The second implication of this movement will be the rise of the NoCode Engineer. This has become a legitimate job title found in many job recs now on LinkedIn and other hiring platforms. Engineers are going to have to become ever more fluent with stringing together no-code tools to build out solutions and deliver business value for their organizations. The engineering purists that insist on owning all of the development process and essentially building things from scratch are going to have a harder time as their no-code counterparts begin to outpace them. So is the future no-code? And as developers and founders, how should we be reacting to this rising trend? As founders and builders, we find ourselves in the interesting position where the paradigm has now inverted. Instead of asking ourselves, how can we code up our project, we ought to begin asking, how can we not code our project? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking we need a custom, shiny new Android, iOS, and web app to bring our idea to life. But more often than not, there's a way to test our business idea with less upfront capital and investment. Instead, we should be asking ourselves, what off-the-shelf solutions can we enlist and string together to rapidly build out our ideas and to gather market data, demonstrate value, and test our business thesis? And adopting that point of view largely de-risks the entire startup phase of a business by eliminating hefty upfront outlays of capital, reducing the time to market, and cutting costs. At the heart of the no-code movement is a story around never-ending abstraction. Software development is perpetually subject to drift as new tooling emerges and matures. We're able to build on top of existing foundations and leave behind the problems that have already been solved. And more broadly, this is the nature of innovation. And remember, if this wasn't the case, we would all still be farmers in the field cultivating crops. But in tech, the arc follows a trajectory whereby problems and use cases emerge, and then companies and enthusiasts hammer out the knotty problems for sometimes decades. Then when the solutions begin to settle and the winners take shape, no-code solutions can come in and systematize it for a larger audience. But beware the hype, no-code is not a panacea. Instead, the promise it can deliver on is it can shift the impossible to possible, the hard to easy, and the easy to automatic. Like most technological innovation, no-code represents yet another incremental improvement and not a radical upending. Staunch techie purists who insist on building their ideas from scratch will increasingly be subject to headwinds as the no-code ecosystem offers ever-increasing speed and cost savings to its adherents. If you want to understand how superstar companies like Snapchat and Pokemon Go have embraced no-code solutions to reach incredible new heights of virality, then you have to watch my video on why top companies are embracing low-code, no-code next. Thanks for watching.